We've earned the right to have a decent holiday, and it's up to the aviation industry, the airlines, and the government to make sure we get it. And that's Quest Means Business for tonight. I'm Richard Quest in New York. Whatever you're up to in the hours ahead, I hope it's profitable. Closing bell ringing.
On the Hill, but will it move any votes? The lead starts right now.
Soon after we received the news that our daughter was among the 19 students and 2 teachers that died as a result of gun violence.
Grieving parents, a distraught doctor, even a 4th grade survivor gripping testimony today on Capitol Hill after mass shootings changed and destroyed, in some cases, their lives. What they want from Congress versus what lawmakers are willing to do. I'm going to talk to a key Republican negotiator next. And the FBI stepping in after an overnight arrest near the home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Will have the latest on the shocking threat. Plus, pro golfers putting their reputations on the line for a paycheck some say is blood money. Ready to tee off with Saudi Arabia's new league, ignoring the country's record on human rights and the murder of a Washington Post columnist. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We start with the upsetting testimony describing the human toll of gun violence in the United States. Front and center on Capitol Hill today, families of victims from the mass shootings in Buffalo, New York and Uvalde, Texas, described before the House Oversight Committee not just the horrific attacks, but what they want to see Congress do to prevent such tragedies from happening again. We also heard from the only pediatrician in Uvalde who rushed to the hospital in the minutes after the shooting only to find there, frankly, was not much he could do.
What I did find was something no prayer will ever relieve. 2 children whose bodies had been pulverized by bullets fired at them, decapitated, whose flesh had been ripped apart, that the only clue as their identities was a blood-splattered cartoon clothes still clinging to them. Clinging for life and finding none.
10-year-old Mia Cerrillo, who told CNN she survived the massacre by spreading her friend's blood all over herself and playing dead. She recorded a video for the hearing in which she talked about her top wish moving forward.
To have security.
Do you feel safe at school? Why not?
Because I don't want it to happen again.
And you think it's going to happen again?
This afternoon, the bipartisan negotiators who have been trying to reach a deal on gun reforms met with a larger group of their Senate colleagues to nail down exactly which proposals can get enough support to pass, if any. CNN's Manu Raju starts off our coverage from Capitol Hill with new details about what is currently in this proposal and a possible new roadblock for negotiators.
Those mothers' cries I will never get out of my head.
In gut-wrenching testimony, witnesses offered horrific details of the massacre in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered at Robb Elementary School last month. A pediatrician who saw this.
2 children whose bodies had been pulverized by bullets fired at them, decapitated, whose flesh had been ripped apart, that the only clue as their identities was a blood-splattered cartoon clothes still clinging to them. Clinging for life and finding none.
A 4th grader who smeared her friend's blood on her body to pretend she was dead.
There's a door between our classrooms, and he went through there and shot my teacher and told my teacher goodnight and shot her in the head. And then he shot some of my classmates and the whiteboard. When I went to the barracks, he shot my friend that was next to me, and I thought he was gonna come back to the room, so I grabbed the blood and put it all over me.
The father of the survivor.
I could have lost my baby girl. She's not the same little girl that I used to play with.
Parents of a 4th grader brutally murdered.
Somewhere out there, there's a mom listening to our testimony, thinking I can't even imagine their pain, not knowing that our reality will one day be hers.
And the mother of a victim from the Buffalo grocery store shooting, detailing the injuries her son has endured.
As I clean his wounds, I can feel pieces of that bullet in his back. Shrapnel will be left inside of his body for the rest of his life.
All demanding action from Congress.
Lawmakers who continuously allow these mass shootings to continue by not passing stricter gun laws should be voted out.
On Wednesday, Senate negotiators discussed a narrow set of changes, including bolstering states' red flag laws and allowing juvenile records to be searched in background checks. But given GOP opposition, any deal will not restrict high-powered semi-automatic rifles or require background checks on gun show sales and over the internet.
A lot of Democrats are concerned that this emerging package is simply not going to go far enough.
I'm sure it won't. Listen, I have a goal to really address gun violence at many different levels that I'd like to see achieved. Now I have to face the reality of a 50-50 Senate, the reality of many Republicans who are resistant to any change.
GOP leaders say they want a deal focused on school security and mental health issues, noting any deal has its limits.
Why do you oppose reinstating the assault weapons ban?
We're trying to get an outcome.
Now, the chief GOP negotiator, John Cornyn, briefed Republicans in generalities about this emerging proposal during lunch today. There was some pushback, I am told, and in talking to several conservative Republican senators, that pushback is around the idea of those red flag laws, providing potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in federal incentives for states to develop those laws to take away guns from individuals deemed a risk. Some conservatives concerns it could trample on due process rights. Others say it is duplicative. And one Senator Steve Daines says that I don't support gun control. I don't think gun control is the answer, and says states already have that choice. So, Jake, still an open question whether a deal can be reached and whether there would be 10 Republican senators enough to break a GOP-led filibuster to get this bill through.
All right, Manu Raju on Capitol Hill for us. Thanks so much. Today, the Justice Department announced the team in charge of reviewing the police response or lack thereof in Uvalde, Texas. More than 2 weeks after the massacre at Robb Elementary School, local officials are still not answering basic questions from the media about what happened that day. CNN's Omar Jimenez is live for us in Uvalde. Omar, how is this investigation from the Justice Department going to work?
Yeah, Jake. Well, Attorney General Merrick Garland said it's going to be a number of site visits. They're going to look at what resources were made available at the time, and they're going to do a number of interviews with a wide range of stakeholders, from parents to families to law enforcement and more. This is, as he said, this is work that has already begun, and they will be on the ground as needed. But at this point, he says this is not going to be a criminal investigation. This is going to be an after-action critical review of what happened so they can assess what happened now more than 2 weeks ago and take this a long way toward future guidance. And while they can't undo the pain, they hope this can at least lay the framework so some of these same mistakes aren't made again. And this is something the mayor of Uvalde, Don McLaughlin, welcomed. He called for it in the beginning as he admitted there were missteps in the initial release of information from law enforcement, which we now know. To use his words, we were told one thing one day, then the next day the story and narrative changed. Now that this DOJ announcement is here, the mayor says he trusts and is fully confident this is going to be a fair and transparent process, and he offered the full cooperation of officials here in Uvalde. But this, of course, comes as the county district attorney says it is going to be a while before we get a report from the Texas Department of Public Safety or the FBI into it.
All right, Omar Jimenez in Uvalde, Texas for us. Thanks so much. Joining us now to discuss is Republican Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. He is a lead negotiator in these bipartisan talks. Senator, thanks for joining us. Obviously, you're in the middle of these negotiations. Are you confident there's going to be a deal? Can you give us any idea of what kind of measures you're discussing?
Yeah, Jake, there's not that much really that I can tell you at this point, except to say that we are making progress. You have men and women from both sides of the aisle who are negotiating in good faith. There are a number of items that are on the table. I think the odds modestly favor us getting something done, and actually this is the first time in 10 years I've felt that way. So, yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Republican senators who were inside the room during your party lunch today say that some of your colleagues feel that the current deal might go too far. They're predicting at least half of the Republican conference would vote against it. That's still theoretically 75 votes to pass it. What do you say to those critics? Are you confident you can get enough Republican votes to pass at least 10?
Jake, I would say it's way too soon to be trying to speculate about vote counts. I mean, we haven't nailed down what's going to be in and what's not going to be in, and the actual language of the ideas that are going to be in. The language matters enormously. So certainly my hope would be a majority of Republicans would be able to support this. That would be very much where I hope we would end up, but I think it's too soon to know.
Senator Rick Scott, when he was Governor Rick Scott of Florida, signed into law pretty sweeping measures after the Parkland massacre in 2018, which included red flag laws, which I understand some of your colleagues are publicly voicing concern about in terms of their not providing due process and the like. But our correspondent Leila Santiago took a look at the red flag laws and how they're working in Florida. Even very conservative sheriffs down there say that they're working really well. Is Rick Scott at all talking about how that reform that he signed into law is working?
I haven't had that conversation with Senator Scott, so I don't know exactly what his view is of the implementation. I can tell you this. I think it's unlikely that there would be a national red flag law per se, but what might find its way into this package, what is under consideration, is providing some federal incentives and resources to encourage states to enact their own red flag laws, provided that they provide some due process, because after all, we are talking about depriving a person of a constitutional right prior to them having actually done something wrong. So you got to be careful about how you do that. But that said, I do think there are cases where red flag laws can work, and that's part of the discussion.
A source tells CNN that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has privately expressed an openness for raising the age from 18 to 21 for the ability to purchase semi-automatic rifles. He has not said that publicly. It doesn't seem as though that is part of your final deal. It wasn't when I talked to Chris Murphy, with whom you've been dealing, the Democrat, on Sunday. He did not mention it. It does seem a lot of Republicans oppose it. Have you heard from other Republicans who might support stronger measures in private but won't do so publicly for whatever reason?
No, no, I've not had that conversation with any of my colleagues, not with Senator McConnell, not with others. Look, I think that it is worth seriously considering providing some extra scrutiny for young purchasers, but prohibitions that would be very tough.
So possibly a waiting period for somebody 18 to 21, possibly time to go through and make sure that there isn't a juvenile record that's blinking red?
Well, I don't want to get too deep into the specifics, Jake, because these are moving targets and ongoing discussions, but a heightened level of scrutiny might make sense, considering that so many of these massacres are committed by young adults, guys in their late teens or early 20s, who have a history of mental health issues. So it sort of stands to reason that you'd like to have a better way to understand that before someone walks away with a firearm.
You've been very active for years now, especially after the Sandy Hook massacre, working with another fellow NRA-endorsed Senator, Joe Manchin, trying to expand background checks to include those private sales at gun shows. I'm sorry, the ones that aren't
sales.
Yeah, the ones exactly that aren't done by gun stores but are rather just person to person. That's not going to be in this final package. Why not? Why are your Republican colleagues balking on that?
So let's be careful. So the Manchin-Toomey approach was not intended to capture a private transaction between myself and my next door neighbor, for instance. But what we were trying to capture, and what I still think we should capture, are what we consider commercial sales. And I think at gun shows, you have a level of activity that really constitutes commercial sales. I think when transactions are advertised, and especially advertised over the internet, that amounts to a commercial activity. I'd like to see background checks on all commercial sales. I don't think the Manchin-Toomey version of that is going to be in a final package here, but I would suggest there are many ways that you could accomplish that goal of ensuring that you capture a lot more transactions and have that background check occur. So let's wait and see what finally emerges. I am hoping that we will expand background checks in a meaningful way.
The emotional testimony we heard today before the House Oversight Committee from victims of gun violence, does that have any impact on your fellow Republican senators?
I don't know, Jake. Honestly, most senators have schedules that is completely booked nonstop all day long, and very few of us, as my guests, have had time to watch a House hearing. But I understand that it was so emotionally powerful. My guess is it'll be replayed many times on many shows, and so over time people will see it. It's very hard to say what impact that'll have.
Best of luck with your negotiations, sir. Republican Senator Pat Toomey from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Always appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jake.
Also in the politics lead, disturbing news overnight. The FBI now handling the arrest of what police say was an armed man near the Maryland home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who he claimed he wanted to kill. Court documents show the man had on him a tactical knife, a Glock 17 pistol, 2 magazines, ammunition, pepper spray, zip ties, a hammer, screwdriver, nail punch, crowbar, pistol light, duct tape, and even more. Police say the man from California was picked up around 1:30 this morning and is now charged with attempted murder. CNN's Whitney Wild is over at the Supreme Court now for us. Whitney, what do we know about this individual's motives?
Well, based on what he told police and what is represented in that indictment is that he was angered by 3 things. He was angered by a leaked draft of the Supreme Court ruling that shows that the Supreme Court is very likely, based on that draft, to overturn Roe v. Wade. He was angry about that. He was angered by what he saw in Uvalde. And further, he thought that, perhaps by Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh would, in pending firearms cases and pending Second Amendment cases, would side with the Second Amendment and thus loosen gun laws. That's what he told investigators. So he thought that he would give his life some purpose. He told investigators he wanted to give his life some purpose, and so he decided that he was going to come from California to Maryland to try to kill Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who, by the way, is not named in the indictment, but we know from police that it was his home, and that he was also going to kill himself afterward. Here's how it all happened, Jake. At 1 in the morning, he got out of a taxi outside Brett Kavanaugh's home. He was dressed in all black. He had a suitcase and he had a backpack. And he saw 2 U.S. Marshal deputies standing outside their vehicle outside Brett Kavanaugh's home. He saw them and he turned and he walked away. And thank goodness for those U.S. deputy marshals, something that Attorney General Merrick Garland and other law enforcement vowed would be out there to protect these justices because they know the threat risk is very real. Here's what Attorney General Merrick Garland said earlier today.
This kind of behavior is obviously behavior that we will not tolerate. Threats of violence and actual violence against the justices, of course, strike at the heart of our democracy, and we will do everything we can to prevent them and to hold people who do them accountable.
Jake, these are the very types of crimes federal officials have been warning are possible in this heightened threat environment. They are very concerned about threats to the Supreme Court justices. In this case is evidence that their concerns are valid. Back to you.
Yeah, that is alleged political terrorism without question. Whitney Wild at the Supreme Court for us. Thank you so much. Coming up next, America's skyrocketing fuel costs now forcing a law enforcement agency to change how it responds to some calls. Plus, the new access to evidence for the January 6th committee on the eve of the panel's very first primetime hearing. Stay with us.
The data shows that the Caribbean and Latin America have some of the highest rates of sex crimes in the world, and sex crimes ties into human trafficking. My name is Jonathan Bagan. I'm based in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm an attorney at law and also chairman of the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes. Say 10 years ago, it was said, even in my country, that nobody should speak out about human trafficking because they will come to get you, the mafia. Now that hundreds of people know about it and are speaking out against it, that darkness has been destroyed, and now we're bringing the issue into the light. Schools across Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, the students were really positive about it. They wrote poems, spoken word poems, they made videos.
I've risen and believed.
And those videos went on to the local media, onto the radio and television.
On arrival, you are forced into captivity and a life of servitude.
So the students were inspired to see their fellow students being connected to CNN International. A lot of kids now know the signs of human trafficking, what it is, and how to avoid it. So we may have saved some lives. My Freedom Day helped raise awareness, educate children, and I hope it inspires politicians and the governments across the region to do more to stop this crime from happening. It's impactful and important, and we hope to do even better next year.
I'm Andrea Vena. I'm the Chief Climate and Sustainability Officer at the European Space Agency. The great responsibility that ESA has to be responsible is linked very much to the fact that since decades our programs are contributing to the understanding of climate change. Our satellites are contributing to the climate variables that are used by scholars and scientists all over the world to identify what are the hotspots for climate change. Therefore, we feel accountable. We know what is the situation, and therefore it is very much important for ESA to be on the leading edge for fighting against climate change.
On Culinary Journeys, meet Japan's Natsuko Shoji, a chef earning rave reviews. Inspired by art, she is a rising star in French cuisine and in an industry where men dominate. See how she overcame life's challenges despite the odds and is now paving the way for a new generation. Culinary Journeys, Sunday on CNN, in association with Ajinomoto.
In our money lead, a prediction that the worst is yet to come for drivers this summer. The national average for gas could hit $6 a gallon, according to one energy analyst. Right now, drivers in 16 states and Washington, D.C. are topping off with gas $5 a gallon or more. Idaho, Ohio, and Pennsylvania just became the latest states to cross that threshold today. U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm joins us now. Madam Secretary, thanks for joining us. Some lawmakers are proposing a suspension of the federal gas tax. Others say the Biden administration needs to allow more drilling, open up more federal lands for drilling. Couldn't the administration be doing more to alleviate some of the pain at the pump?
First of all, Jake, the administration is doing everything at its disposal and considering everything. The issue about more drilling, they have unfettered access to drilling. There is not, they're sitting on meaning the oil and gas companies, are sitting on 9,000 permits that have been issued. This administration issued more permits for drilling of oil and gas in the first year it's been in office than the previous administration did in each of the first 3 years. So that's not the issue. The issue is that we have a lower supply globally. Gasoline comes from oil. Oil is traded on a global market. There are fewer barrels of oil on that global market, which is driving up prices. Why? Because in the United States and around the globe, when the pandemic hit, the oil and gas companies pulled production offline because there was no demand, or a lot less demand for oil and gas. They have not ramped up production to the amount it was before the pandemic. They're about 1 million barrels shy, 10% less in the United States. In the United States, they will be up to 1 million barrels more, up to where they were before the pandemic by the end of the year. But then you've also got countries like the United States, Canada, the EU saying we're not going to buy Russian oil.
Right.
Russia is a big exporter of oil. That pulls another 1 million barrels off the market. And then you've got China coming out of COVID. That increases demand for more. So you've got a supply and demand mismatch. The president used the biggest tool at his disposal, which was releasing 1 million barrels a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And he's looking at all other options. But no, everybody should know this is a global issue. If you were in Canada, you would be paying $6.39 a gallon. If you were in Germany, you would be paying $8.90 a gallon. If you were in Singapore, you'd be paying $9.08 a gallon.
Right.
It is happening everywhere.
I want to get your reaction to a Facebook post today from your home state of Michigan, where you served as governor. It reads, quote, Isabella County Sheriff's Office is feeling the pain at the pump as well. We have exhausted what funds were budgeted for fuel. With several months to go before the budget reset, I have instructed the deputies to manage whatever calls are acceptable over the phone, unquote. Does the White House have a plan for public servants such as those sheriffs and sheriff's deputies who need gas to do their jobs?
It's not just the police officers. It is also emergency responders from hospitals. It is people who desperately need to get to work and cannot afford the price of gas. It is all of that. I mean, clearly, states should be prioritizing first responders and police officers and safety when they help to be able to consider funding or providing supplemental funds, which many states have as a result of the American Rescue Plan. We in the federal government are looking at all sorts of options too, but we also know that because of the efforts of the Biden administration to be able to make our economy a little better than the other countries, the other advanced nations. For example, our inflation rate and the inflation rate across the world in advanced nations are pretty comparable. In the UK, it's about 9%, but our unemployment rate is a lot less. Our unemployment rate is 3.6%. In the other countries, it's about 6. In EU, it's about 6.2. I say that because while other countries are still struggling with unemployment, that's not been our issue. We have been able to fund the ability for people to get back to work and provided funds to states so that they can help to shore up their first responders as they deal with this fuel crisis too.
It sounds like your message to those sheriffs and sheriff's deputies is ask Governor Whitmer to get some funding your way to help out. Let me ask you, because shares of Exxon climbed above $100 on Tuesday for the first time since 2014. And as you know, Western sanctions on Russian oil have made the market even tighter. So that's been a huge advantage for companies like Exxon, whose profit doubled last quarter to $5.5 billion. That's really insane profits. Is the administration putting any pressure on U.S.-based oil companies to maybe relieve some of the pain that is hitting consumers?
Absolutely. We are calling upon them, especially to increase production. Many of them, as you know from your reporting right there, have decided to prioritize shareholder buybacks and profit instead of increasing production of oil and gas. And so this administration has been calling upon them to increase production at this moment when people are having to choose between going to work, putting food on the table, et cetera. These prices are unacceptable. I will say this, that some of the oil and gas companies have started to increase production, and the Energy Information Administration has said that by the end of this year, there will be another 1 million barrels per day as a result of domestic oil and gas producers. The Energy Information Administration has also projected, they just came out with their short-term energy outlook, and they say that by the end of this year, we will see prices dropping as a result of that incremental increase in production in the United States and globally as well. But the bottom line is it's still going to be expensive, and we are continuing to ask the oil and gas companies to prioritize production so that we can stabilize this mismatch between supply and demand.
The White House has announced plans for President Biden to go to meet with Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, next month. There's a lot of pressure for the president to hold Saudi Arabia accountable for the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post columnist, as well as lingering concerns of 9/11 families. Can the president do that? Can he hold MBS accountable while also getting his help when it comes to global energy markets?
Well, he's certainly going to try. There is no doubt that Saudi Arabia has to account for what they did with Jamal Khashoggi, what MBS did. But there's also no question that we have to increase global supply, and OPEC, led by Saudi Arabia, is at the head of the pack for that. And so in order to be able to reduce this pressure that people are feeling at the gas pump, we want to see all producers across the globe increase supply, including our own domestic oil and gas companies.
All right, Secretary Granholm, thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate it. Coming up next, the $40+ billion in aid that the U.S. is giving to Ukraine. CNN got a very up-close look at some of the sophisticated weapons supplied by the U.S. now being used against Russia. Stay with us.
Afghan women are afraid that this is the beginning of your efforts to erase them from the workspace.
Malumness, it's not clear. Even if we appear with the burqa, maybe they will say that women's voices are forbidden.
Did you ever imagine that you would be prevented from going to school?
Girls' education is fundamental to the dignity of Afghan life.
Do you believe that young girls will be allowed to go to school here in Afghanistan?
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
I'm Paula Newton in Ottawa, and this is CNN.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
Heard it all before? But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has.
What can we do that explores a fresh angle?
So let's untangle the players and political forces.
The truth is a lot more complex. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Tonight on CNN.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta in New York, and this is CNN.
In our World Lead exclusive new look at weapons that could change the war for Ukraine. These guns are called M777s. They were given to Ukraine by the United States. Soldiers can use them to strike Russian forces up to 20 miles away. CNN's Matthew Chance is on the front lines of the war, where Ukrainians explain why these weapons are giving them a unique advantage.
These are just some of the powerful American guns now on the Ukrainian front lines, meant to make a critical difference in the war with Russia. Of course, they might be targeted at any moment. Media access to them is highly sensitive and rare. All right, well, we've been taken here very close to the front lines in southern Ukraine, where we're being shown these US-provided long-range artillery systems. It's an M777. According to Ukrainian military officials that we've spoken to, the US has so far supplied approximately 90 of these weapons, and many of them are already being used on the front line, including in this area here in the south of Ukraine, pounding Russian positions. We were only shown a training exercise, but Ukrainian military officials say these are exclusive images of the same weapons in action just this week, firing on Russian forces more than 20 miles away. Including on this Grad multiple rocket launcher they say had been targeting civilian areas. Ukrainian aerial footage shows the Grad being destroyed, its ammunition exploding after a direct hit. Ukrainian artillery troops say their guns are now giving them an edge, and their Russian counterparts are feeling the pain.
Yes, they definitely notice as we became faster and more precise. They are not able to keep up with us as they are operating old Soviet guns, which are heavier, less precise, slower, and difficult to use. These guns are objectively the best in the world, and when we started using them, our efficiency rose tremendously.
It's giving the Ukrainian military an advantage, they say, on the battlefield, because these weapons are much lighter, much more accurate than they've used before, much more mobile as well. And it's giving them the edge, they say, to try and help them push back Russian forces all along this region. But of course, the complaint, if you can call it a complaint, is that they want more of this. They want more weapons like this, and they want even longer range rocket systems, which have already been promised, of course, by the United States, to push back the Russians even further. And Ukrainian authorities are likely to need more guns still to hold them back. With no end to this conflict, the demand for US weapons may be endless too. Well, Jake, to reiterate that, Ukrainian officials are again calling tonight for more deliveries of US weapons and for those deliveries to come as quickly as possible so they can defend, they say, Ukrainian cities against further Russian attack. This, of course, as Russian forces make more gains in the Donbass region. Jake, back to you.
All right, Matthew Chance in Ukraine for us. Thank you so much. Just in, a change of plans for evidence that was about to get handed over to the January 6th committee. Stay with us.
For World Sport.
World Sport. For World Sport, I'm Coy Wyatt.
I'm Amanda Davis.
I'm Andy Scholes. I'm Don Riddell.
I'm Alex Thomas.
I'm Patrick Snell.
And this
is CNN.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for a market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Weekdays on CNN.
We are now in a major point of flux from being a telco into being a techco. And I think we're not the only big company that is looking at it. We are moving it really into a time where we're looking into consumer digital products, enterprise digital products, and really looking at providing solutions, not just providing connectivity.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
I want this show, One World, to be a place where people watching from all corners of the globe can understand why what happens in Africa has a huge impact on all of our lives in ways we might never even know. Because of my background, I am well aware of the vibrancy of this continent, and I want to show that to the world. People of my continent do deserve to be heard. We are rich in ways beyond the soil beneath our feet.
One World with Zain Asher, weeknights on CNN. This is CNN.
In our politics lead today, we're just one day away from the first primetime hearing of the January 6th Capitol attack, and a new trove of potential evidence that was supposed to be turned over to House investigators tonight, it turns out will not be. After all, a federal judge just decided to give right-wing attorney John Eastman more time to turn over more than 150 emails he had been fighting to protect. Eastman, of course, a staunch ally of then-President Trump, who pushed the unconstitutional theory that Vice President Pence could have sent electoral votes for Biden back to the states on January 6th. CNN's Ryan Nobles is on Capitol Hill for us. Ryan, what is in these emails that the investigators think are so important?
Well, these are emails sent and received by John Eastman, that conservative lawyer who's thought by many to be the architect of these various questionable legal strategies to prevent the certification of the election results. And in these particular emails, the judge specifically said that he would allow the committee to have access to them despite an attorney-client privilege claim, because he does believe that there is evidence of some sort of crime possibly being committed. And he specifically pointed to the fact that the emails talk about these legal strategies somewhat going around the court system, that they would be put in place even if judges ruled against them. And that could be an indication that they were trying to stand in the way of the peaceful transfer of power outside of the legal system. And of course, that flies in the face of some of the claims by the former president and his associates. They were just doing this because they thought the election was held fraudulently. Jake, this would indicate otherwise.
Top Democratic leaders have been telling CNN that they fear the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, might have missed his moment to bring any criminal charges against former President Trump or others in the Trump orbit regarding January 6th. What has them so worried?
Well, Jake, they simply believe that the timing of all of this is running out, that there is only so much time during the period of time where the Attorney General is in charge and as all this evidence is collected for them to get everything in place to try and hand out these charges. Now, there are members of the Select Committee that feel differently, that this investigation is still ongoing, that there is still the possibility that enough evidence would emerge in order to take that process. The question is whether or not Garland will act on all of that information. That remains an open question, and we could get more insight into that as these hearings start to kick off on Thursday night, as they start to lay out the case of what they've uncovered over the past 10 months. Jake?
All right, Ryan Nobles, thanks so much. A pro golf tournament set to tee off, offering athletes hundreds of millions of dollars in prize money. How some of the biggest names in golf are responding to the blood-soaked hands of Saudi Arabia, largely footing the bill. Stay with us.
Populations of wildlife need genetic diversity to be resilient, to be able to survive. You get that resilience and you get that genetic diversity by having mixing. You know, you have mixing of jaguars from the northern part of Belize with jaguars of the southern part of Belize. And that means that wildlife need to find their way through that tiny sliver of forest. Imagine you're getting squeezed on both sides, right? Your forest cover is going. In this particular case, it's mostly due to large-scale mechanized monocrop or agriculture that's taking place. We are here at the Cox Lagoon wetland, which is actually a very critical and important part of a 30,000-acre parcel of land that we have just purchased to protect in perpetuity for the people and government of Belize. Hope is the last thing to keep you standing. You know, when there is no hope, then that's it.
I'm Jim Bitterman in Paris, and this is CNN.
The sports lead hitting the green. Lured by hundreds of millions of dollars, some of the most recognizable names in golf are set to tee off in a new Saudi-funded golf series called LIV. Despite a long history of human rights abuses allegations against Saudi Arabia and the kingdom's role, of course, in 9/11, not to mention the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Six-time major champion Phil Mickelson and former world #1 Dustin Johnson are among the stars who are going to play in tomorrow's inaugural event outside London, as CNN's Alex Thomas reports for us now. Critics say the Saudi regime is sports washing, attempting to use sports to reshape its brutal image.
Backed by Saudi Arabia's billions of dollars, LIV Golf could fundamentally change the professional men's game. The new series offers players fewer tournaments and guaranteed prize money. Lots of it. Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson are the biggest stars to sign up, and the pair are earning more from this than their entire prize money from a combined 45 years on the PGA Tour.
This is something that I thought was best for me and my family, and I'm very excited about playing. And obviously, this is the first week, and it's just, it's something exciting, it's something new, and I think it's great for the game of golf, and so that's why I'm here.
LIV Golf CEO Greg Norman says his new series is game-changing, especially for lower-ranked players.
The PGA Tour doesn't give a rat's ass about what's going to happen to you after you finish playing the game of golf. They don't.
But the money hasn't impressed everyone. Norman told the Washington Post that Tiger Woods turned down a high 9-figure sum to join. Woods has called the venture, quote, polarizing. While another golf legend, Jack Nicklaus, says he also rejected an offer to get involved worth $100 million.
I've had zero interest in it. I don't care what kind of money they would have thrown at me. My allegiance has been to the PGA Tour. I grew up with the PGA Tour. I helped found the PGA Tour as it is today. And my allegiance is there. It's going to stay there.
It's the backing by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, chaired by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, that has attracted the stiffest criticism. The Arab nation has long been accused of sports washing, using the popularity of sporting events to clean up its reputation for human rights abuses and alleged state-sponsored killings. A US intelligence report claimed bin Salman himself sanctioned the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. Something bin Salman denies. Even Mickelson said it was scary getting involved with the Saudis, but he says golf desperately needs change, and real change is always preceded by disruption.
I don't condone human rights violations at all. I don't think nobody here does, throughout the world, and I'm certainly aware of what has happened with Jamal Khashoggi, and I think it's terrible. I've also seen the good that the game of golf has done throughout history, and I believe that LIV Golf is going to do a lot of good for the game as well.
Despite the reservations, LIV Golf is forging ahead with 8 tournaments this year, 5 of which are in the United States, with the season finale at the Trump National Doral course in Florida. A couple of months ago, this project looked finished. Now it has a Hall of Famer in Mickelson, last year's world #1 in Johnson, and reports that Bryson DeChambeau will be next. You know, Jake, money often trumps morals, and far from going away, this LIV Golf series is gaining momentum before a ball has even been struck.
Alex Thomas at the site of tomorrow's inaugural LIV Golf Tournament just outside London. Thanks so much.
Hello, I'm Isa Suarez in London. We're now going to leave the lead with Jake Tapper and take a deeper look at today's international stories for our viewers right around the world. I'll be bringing you the global brief in just a few minutes. I'll first be speaking to the family of missing journalist Dom Phillips. He and Indigenous Affairs specialist Bruno Pereira disappeared on Sunday. They were working in a remote area of the Amazon rainforest. This is what Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro had to say. Have a listen.
Really, 2 people only on a boat in a region like that, completely wild, is not a recommended adventure. Anything can happen.